Hello, this tutorial shows you how to BIOS update quickly with easy MSI Flash BIOS button and USB drive. And also how to install 48GB of RAM on a DDR5 motherboard. Prepare BIOS update with Flash BIOS button. I have already tried to install a 48GB of memory RAM on my computer. But the computer automatically restarts on its own, displaying a black screen. To solve the issue, let's update the BIOS. There are a few ways to do this. Since I cannot start the computer, I am going to update the BIOS using the Flash BIOS button. You can update the BIOS using the Flash BIOS button method, whether with other computer components installed or without any components installed at all. Truly, you only need a motherboard, power supply, 24-pin power cable, an 8-pin CPU auxiliary power cable, and the USB flash drive 32GB or less. You can easily prepare a motherboard by connecting the power supply cables. First, connect a 24-pin cable to the motherboard. And then you can connect the 8-pin CPU power cable as well. Alright, now that the motherboard is ready, you can move on to configuring the USB flash drive. Create USB flash drive to Flash BIOS using USB BIOS Flashback method. Insert your USB flash drive into the device with the internet connection. First, we need to format a USB flash drive, so if you have any data on it, it's better to back up. Otherwise, you will lose all data from the USB flash drive after formatting it. Right-click on the USB flash drive and select Format. Choose FAT32 from the file system. Rename USB if desired. And click Start to format the USB flash drive. Once the formatting is complete, you will get a notification. So, click OK, and close the formatting window. You can check your USB flash drive. It must be empty. Then open a web browser. Go to your motherboard support page. And search for the BIOS files. Usually, it should be under the Drivers and Downloads tab. Recommendation: find and download the latest BIOS version. First, enable file name extension, so after we can easily change file name. Double-click on the zip file. Go to the View tab. In the Show section, check the box next to File Name Extensions. File extensions will now be visible for all files. Let's copy the BIOS update file to a USB flash drive. I just reopened my USB flash drive to make sure the BIOS file is in the correct place. Now we need to rename the BIOS file as shown. Select the full file name and change it to msi.rom. Finally, your USB flash driver must contain one file. And it should look like this. Now we can safely remove the USB flash drive from the computer. But before using it, it's a good idea to go back to your motherboard support page. And find a correct USB port that supports USB flashing. This information usually can be found in your motherboard manual. So find and open the manual. Look for it in the contents of the document. It should be somewhere under the back panel connectors. Here it is, number 11, the Flash BIOS port. On my motherboard it is located at the back panel somewhere in the middle. It looks like all the necessary preparations have been completed. We can disconnect the USB drive from the computer, and begin the BIOS flashing process. Turn on your power supply. Let's locate the motherboard back panel to find out the correct USB port for flashing BIOS. Here is my motherboard manual, so I need number 11. Looks like this is a number 11. Oh, it was just a joke, but it's better to wear gloves and keep yourself and your stuff safe. Okay, initially, plug in USB in the correct BIOS port. Press and hold the Flash BIOS button for a duration of 3 to 5 seconds. Following this action, monitor the USB drive light, or the motherboard lights for any indication of flashing. My USB drive does not have an LED light. But as you see, the motherboard started flashing a red light. Any flashing light on the motherboard indicates that the USB flashing process is functioning properly. In case lights don't start flashing for a long time, the most common reason is a faulty USB flash drive. So you can try using a different USB drive. During the BIOS update process, the LED lights on the motherboard will continue flashing. BIOS update using the BIOS flashing button and USB flashing method usually takes approximately 4 to 7 minutes. So I skip the BIOS update process. If your power supply will turn off automatically, don't worry, that means your BIOS update has been completed successfully. Once the BIOS update is finished, light flashing will stop on the motherboard and the USB. Allow the computer to remain idle for a few minutes to ensure the update is finalized. Then, remove the USB drive. At this stage, the motherboard BIOS update has been successfully completed. The next step is how to properly install memory RAM modules onto your motherboard. For safety reasons, please make sure that the motherboard is not receiving any power. First, turn off the power supply, and unplug any power cables. This is my setup. Z790 Edge Wi-Fi motherboard. And 2 memory RAMs, 48 GB each. The most accurate and reliable information on setting up your RAM with your motherboard can always be found in your motherboard manual. This setup is for an MSI Z790 motherboard. It's important to note that different motherboards may require different installation processes for RAM. Be sure to find your motherboard's manual and carefully follow the instructions provided to ensure proper installation. Great, I have successfully attached both RAM modules to the motherboard. Everything seems to be in order. Let's get power back and see what we have got. Turn on a motherboard without a case or power switch. As you can see, BIOS update completed successfully. This concludes the demonstration of how to BIOS update quickly, with easy MSI Flash BIOS button and USB drive. Thanks for watching. If that sounds like something that could help you, then make sure to join me, subscribe to my channel with notification, and be the first who gets more great tips and tricks.